Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our Silver Lining series, Silver Lining, Finding Hope Through Faith. We are, I believe, on our 6th or 7th, I always kind of forget, a session or our program, which is fantastic. And today I'm super, super excited to have someone who I think is amazing. And she's actually served on our board before as well, speaking with us. So before that, just to give you a little recap, as I always say in the beginning of our programs, the whole idea behind this program, Silver Linings, Finding Hope Through Faith, was to kind of highlight the positives, the hope, the pockets of hope that we can experience within this pandemic. Silver lining is usually considered to be something that's hopeful amid something that's gloomy, and certainly this pandemic can be something that's characterized as such. So today we're really, really honored to have actually the Honorable Deborah Sanchez with us, who will be speaking to us in regards from her Native American faith, from Native American spirituality aspect in regards to what's going on and just having a conversation with us about that. So Deborah, thank you so much. Welcome. It's so good to see you.
It's good to be here and good to be with you and good to see you.
It's been a few years, hasn't it?
It's been a while.
Yeah, you will. We're so grateful to you, not just for your friendship, but you've continued to support the council, and thank you so much for that. And you were on our board for, I think, 2 terms almost, and we do miss you, but we're grateful that you always keep in touch with us and connected with us. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. My pleasure and my honor.
Thank you. So to begin with, Deborah, I wanted to ask, just introduce yourself to all of us. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, just so we get to know you a little bit better.
Okay. Shakswal kuku kaktis muich wala sanchi kaktimes kapanes humolo kiswahili nakalamo hilimu ka kapanes tohono ke akime otam kusichis nakutiyu. Well, I just said that my name is She Loves the People in my native language, Muich, and I'm Deborah Sanchez in English. My ancestral village is Swahili on the island of Limu, where most people would probably call that today Santa Cruz Island. That's where my people come from. I'm also saying that I'm happy. I'm also Tohono and Akime Ota, and that's a tribal nations in southern Arizona. And I said, I'm happy to see you all or be with y'all. And I'm a Superior Court judge in Los Angeles, but I'm also a language keeper, a language instructor, a culture bearer for my people, and been doing many, many things for years to help facilitate a return to Native culture, Native ways, and Native ways of being. Ways of thinking, philosophy, stories, old connections of language and what they mean to us, expressing our worldview.
So Deborah, when you say, our people, can you explain that a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
Yes, and I think it's important, and I thank you for asking that question, because in the United States, you have many, many tribal groups, and there's some universality into how we think and what our faith traditions are, but the practices are really some of the practices and some of the philosophies are really tied to the geographical area where people come from. So when I say that, I'm talking about Native Americans in the United States, and some there's some people prefer American Indian, and some people original nation. So there's a lot of different terms that we use for the sake of, I may use American Indian and Native American to talk about that, but there's many, many peoples. And I think like the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, they added that S and they fought over it. And part of it is because sometimes folks lump us all together and we're very, very different languages, especially California. There were more languages spoken here in California than anywhere else in the United States in terms of geography, what are now the states, and all of the variety of languages that were available. So I am specifically Chumash,
Mhm.
Coastal California, as I mentioned, my people come from the islands, what is now called Santa Cruz or Limu, and also southern Arizona. So those are my nations and my background there.
And so tell me a little bit about, you were saying how in Southern California you have the, kind of the largest pool of these varied languages of the varied people from the various Native American communities. So how did that come about? Why Los Angeles?
Well, it's really all of California had the variety, the most variety of languages. There were many languages spoken, probably over 85 to 100, over
Wow.
100 different languages. But in Los Angeles, we have a large population, the largest population in Los Angeles County or concentration of American Indians as opposed to anywhere else in the United States. And I think part of the reason is because the government did have programs that relocated other Native Americans from other states into Los Angeles, was one of the big hubs.
Mhm.
Chicago, San Francisco, big cities where people were relocated. So you have a very wide variety of people here, not just California Indigenous, but Native people from all over the country.
Wow. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about particularly the Chumash and your your role within that community as well. It's really interesting because you are a judge, which is a significant honor and a place to be in regards to kind of the our community overall. So you have that one foot kind of in the government aspect of it, and then you're also a practicing, obviously, part of the Native American community. So tell me a little bit more about now. Tell me how to properly properly identify this. Would we say the Chumash people, the Chumash tribe? What is the term?
I think you could say the Chumash people, right? Because
Okay.
yeah, that's good. There's different groups within the Chumash Nation, but we're all
Okay.
part of the Chumash family.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about your involvement, your role within the Chumash people. Um,
So I think probably one of the most important aspects when we're talking about spirituality, faith traditions, or cultural people
mhm.
is that there's really no line. The way I was raised and the way I was taught is how you live your life is your prayer. So how you treat others, how you treat the land, how you treat the other relatives like plant and animal, ocean creatures, all of those things. That sacredness is all around you every day in every way. So other people, there's this way of being or thinking that involves being recognizing your connection and also your that you're just a part of this world, this fabric, this creation that's here. And um, so in my role, I do a lot of things. I may, well, I guess the way you could look at it is like we like bless people, but I mean I'm using that as a term, but basically you're helping to facilitate going into an event or into a gathering in a very pure way. And so we use sage a lot of times, and we may use the smoke from the sage to cleanse ourselves. And the way that I believe and the way I was taught is that the sage plant is, we use white sage, but traditionally the Chumash use what we call wewe, which is another type of sage. But it's pretty, a lot of people use white sage now. But in that blessing with the smoke and with that ceremony, usually with everybody standing in a circle, we're telling the creator that we want to walk into this pure, leave the things behind, that anything that might cloud our minds or be negative or blocking us from actually connecting to our people, other people, or the relations around us. And as I mentioned, plant, animal, marine, from the air, and other people as well. So so those are some of the things, and I may do that. But I'm also a culture bearer, so I've helped. I'm one of the people, one of the many, many people standing on the shoulders of others who are bringing people back to our maritime ways. We were Yeltomolich, which is people of the tomo, of the canoe, and a lot of our traditional practices, of course, were cut short and prohibited. So we were trying to bring a lot of those things back. You know, other people in my community, the way we believe too is everybody has different gifts. But I'm also a song maker, and some of those songs have had to be created for mourning times. So when people die or when they want to remember them, those are some of the songs that have been. There's some that were recorded, left behind, that people knew, but there are a lot of gaps in our cultural ways. So some of those songs that I've created have been part of those ceremonies now, and honoring the dead, honoring the people that have passed on or have gone on to the next world. And then other songs as well for weddings, for grandkids, for babies that are coming. All of those things are part of what I contribute to the community to help us stay whole, you know, help us maintain. We're only 2% of the U.S. population. Previously, of course, we had been teeming with millions of people in the Americas. So there's a lot. I think a lot of people who are following traditional ways, they wear a lot of hats. They wear a lot of hats. They're teachers, they're regalia makers, they're language keepers, they're song makers, they're spiritual people, and I'm one of those people. There's many. We don't usually have a. There are people that are considered like, I guess in different tribes too, faith keepers. But usually it's not really a hierarchy. It's more of a circular, and also who can do it, right? So geographically, who's available, who can do this blessing, or who can go here and talk about our people and our beliefs. So that's part of so I'm part of that fabric. I'm part of the fabric of the people that help bring back the culture, but the spirituality through the culture, through the ways of talking, through our language, through our songs, through those things.
Right. So let me kind of circle back to the present in regards to this whole pandemic that we're facing, right? In terms of, you know, the COVID, the corona, the circumstances, how people are being affected by it. So the first question I wanted to ask you in regards to that is, you know, as Deborah Sanchez, as, you know, both the Honorable Deborah Sanchez, the judge, as the person who facilitates, you know, the spirituality within the culture of the Chumash people, what are your thoughts about what is something that's just really kind of taken you back in terms of seeing how this pandemic has revealed itself in our communities?
Yes, well, you know, there's a prophecy, and it's the prophecy is about the galaxy turning. And in 2012, when they were talking about the end of the world, there was in the prophecy. This is the Mayan prophecy, but it talks about that we were coming into the galactic dawn, that life as we knew it was going to change. And so nobody really knew what that means. What does it mean to change? And then when the COVID epidemic and pandemic spread across the world, you also saw these other phenomena that were happening from space, and you saw the clearing of the air. You saw the animals walking on the beach, walking on abandoned roadways. You got to see nature flourishing and coming back, like even turtles hatching, and all these things were happening all over the place, including Los Angeles, which had the best air quality that it had for I don't know how long. Mm-hmm. So I think that I hope that most people that saw the effects of not having life as has been, normal, considered normal. It was not is not normal. Don't go back to normal. There's so many things that have been revealed, and I can't help but think, is this pandemic part of that prophecy? Because it's just so much has changed. And I think also the value, there was a comment, I remember, in public comment that was on the news, and it talked about sacrificing elders for the economy. That would be, I think for most people, that's just horrid. It's a horrid statement. And for us, the elders really maintain the wisdom, the traditions, the way of life. They're the ones that teach. And so the vulnerable ones are the elders in this, and the kids. The kids are the future. So to say that is like our most precious segment. To say something like this feels so foreign. And so a lot of Native people were putting out things that were talking about our elders and taking care of them. So it's just been, I think it's been a real eye-opener for most people around the world to see what happens. It's not like you could hide from it. You can't go anywhere and be safe. It's everywhere, and in some places more than others. But even looking at statistics, they looked at factors. What creates and delay creates more loss of lives, for example, delay and actually, and then people not complying with stay-at-home orders. Then you have other things like, people around the world, like you also see this collaboration for most people trying to find a way to find either a medication or cure or a vaccine that's going to slow the spread or effectively treat people. And I have I was going to say, one of our culture bearers, no one's died yet in our community, and hopefully that stays that way. But we did have one of the culture bearers severely with a severe form of the coronavirus, which attacked the brainstem. And this particular person was a well-known dancer, a regalia maker, a spiritual person that when this happened, she's not able to really even walk yet, and she had delirium. So it was the real strong, the very, very hard. She was in the hospital for more than a month. So it's like, so there, these realities of does this affect each other? Yeah. I think we went to sing and dance in our regalias in front of her house, but maintaining social distancing and also wearing masks on her. And that's hard to do, to dance and sing with a mask on, but we were all very respectful of the modern science and what they've recommended in order to stop the spread and to keep other people safe. So.
Right. How is she doing now?
She's still recovering, and it's basically, she was told that it might take a year because of the just relearning to walk. There's lapses of memory. There's she had to have emergency tracheotomy. There is just her voice has changed because the surgery that she had. So she was a singer also. So it's really impacted her, and I think by extension everybody, all the community, but especially those people that were culture bearers that continually help to revitalize the language, the culture, and the spirituality of our people. So holding it together. So I think more than anything, it's the reality that can be. And we were all in New York, me, her, and another person. They both got COVID-19, and the other person was sick for a while, but was at home, didn't have to be hospitalized. And I didn't have any symptoms, or I didn't fall ill to the virus. But it's real. It was in early March, I think we were there.
Oh wow! Well, she'll certainly be in our prayers.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All your listeners too.
Of
you
course.
Can pray for her. That would be really beautiful.
You were talking about how you and you went to her house and you did a dance in front of her house with the social distancing, which, honestly, I think that's just a beautiful example of how I think one of the things we see right now, and I think most of us would agree, is that, we consider it what I say a first world problem, right? We're tired. We're tired of being home. We're tired of, there's some valid, legitimate people who are really hurting, who, have lost their jobs and they need to work. And we totally understand that. But then there are others who are just kind of like, you know what? It's fine. It'll be okay. I'm going to go about and do my thing without kind of realizing that their actions also affect other people. And I think what you just said is really a beautiful example of how you can still practice your own faith, but at the same time be cognizant so as to not hurt other people, which is so important.
Yeah.
For your As I'm a practicing Muslim, and as Muslims, we pray 5 times a day, right? That's one of our rules of our faith. And, and this prayer can be done at home or it can be done in congregation at the mosque. Obviously, because of the pandemic, the mosques have been shut down or closed. And so we're doing this at home and things like that. We just experienced Ramadan at home, which is something new for all of us. I wanted to ask you, particularly, I know you talked about, the prayers that the singing, the dancing, the various prayers. Are there things on a daily basis that you practice, and have those practices been somehow affected by, kind of the whole pandemic and the ramifications of that?
Yes, I think that it's not a daily practice, but because as I mentioned, the philosophy is, and the belief is that everything you do throughout the day, everything you meet all around you is a sacred space. But the practices of us being together, especially because there's so few of us, we would meet every month to pray, to learn, to do learn cultural things and learn the language. So those prayers have been affected by this, but being together and also being in nature, because we would go to these spaces in nature, and yet we're not able to do that right now because of the fact that one thing is especially now, and maybe things may ease or we may find other ways to be together, but because of the amount of people. And I said there's not very many of us, but when we get together, there's probably about maybe between 30 and 40 people. So that may not sound a lot to some folks, but for us to be together like that, it can't happen. And so under these circumstances where we have few people, we have every person is so precious because of their knowledge and their wisdom and what they have to contribute. Not having a person in your personal, being together to pray has been very depressing. I think for a lot of us, the depression was really hard. And then to see other Native people experiencing the death that they've experienced, knowing also that there's so few people in this country, and especially even fewer practicing traditional ways, it was just depressing. And I suffered that depression, worrying about my friend and worrying about what was going to happen, even myself. And we were off work too from the courts. They closed my court building and we rotated in and out. So those times that we were home, especially in the beginning, it looked really, I don't know, it was very bleak, I think, that in some ways. And then usually being together and praying together, it would lift that fear. And there's a lot of people too that say, well, this is part of, and there's not just one prophecy, but there's all these prophecies about the way we live and we're headed for destruction. And I think this intervention of this pandemic, as horrible as it is also has some positive parts to it because of the way people have opened their eyes. not just to the way we live, the way we waste, the way we, and then what we care for one another. Because part of what you said earlier about when we wear masks, we are protecting the other, and for us, it's not even a question. How would you not protect another? How would you not do something so simple that it could help somebody not spread the virus? Because that wearing that mask is not for me, it's for you.
Exactly.
And so that's what we did. We went, like, even being out there with especially having the reality of our culture bear almost dying, we went there, we put our masks on, and we danced in the hot sun out in the front, but to bring her that medicine, to bring her the healing that we know she needs. It's not for the individual wearing the mask, for the other. And two people wearing a mask in a closer space, you have so much less chance of transmitting the virus or catching it.
Right, absolutely. So, you were talking about these gatherings that obviously you can't partake in right now. Now, we're currently on Zoom, and Zoom has become synonymous with the pandemic, I think,
Oh, yes.
and, and we joke about it now, but there is a lot of blessing in it, and the fact that we're still able to feel a sense of community. I'm able to learn so much from you just sitting here, and it's facilitated by this process. It's really interesting how different faith communities have kind of integrated that within their faith communities and their practices.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder, is that even feasible for, when you used to meet physically? Is there anything that you can do through Zoom or some other way so that you don't?
We are using Zoom as and I think part of what I've been doing a lot of is just transmitting, like if we're praying on Zoom with language, with song, those kinds of things, but also using voice clips. For example, one of my friends was having the 1 year memorial of her mother's death, and she said, you send me one of the morning songs? Well, usually those kinds of songs you have to learn them in person. There's other songs, social songs, that you can send through the technology, but usually but this is an emergency. It's like, how are we going to do this? So I send her the voice clip on from the phone, and with the morning song that she needed to help memorialize her mom after the 1 year time frame. So we meet on Zoom. We just began meeting once a week. We just meet once a week on Sunday nights, and on Zoom, and whoever can make it makes it. And a lot of times we interact with each other. We've also have a space where it's an 8,000-year-old Chumash village site where we'll be meeting this weekend, maintaining social distancing, and but to be together with a smaller amount of people. So we have to have a smaller amount of people, and everybody knows what they have to do. They all know. We're going to follow the CDC guidelines, but also we're able to meet, but in a smaller group. And I feel sorry for a lot of the people that aren't able to be with us, but we're going to have to do maybe these opportunities in shifts where, you went last time, so this time we're going to have this many people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of what we've been doing. But the Zoom is really, it's been a blessing. And even my own family, we've been meeting every Sunday morning, and sharing with each other, and also checking in about what is going on, the reality of the pandemic in our individual lives, including loss of job, including being home. I was quarantined for 3 weeks when I got back from New York, especially after both of my dear friends were diagnosed with COVID. So I was here, in my house alone, just thinking about all kinds of things, right? But it also clarifies that priorities that we have in ourselves, with each other, and still there's things going on where other spiritual people are getting involved in practically like in oil drilling situations, blessing areas where, going to areas to bring the native perspective on the what is perceived as the assault on Mother Earth. So there's people that are doing things out there, but it's a lot of it has been on Zoom. But the meeting every Sunday with the prayer has been on Zoom.
Mm.
That's how we've been doing it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that about those people who are giving the Native American perspective on things that are, hurtful to our world, basically. And it just reminds me, our encounter with one another was actually on a panel at the aquarium. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And I fell in love. I was like, this woman is amazing. Like everything was just oozing wisdom for me. And just slowly, I was like, I'm going to court her and get her on my board.
That was a
part of our community, because I think, going back to the Native American people, the Native American spirituality, I studied religion as a grad student, and
yes.
And it's a mixed blessing because you're studying everything from A to Z. But I remember one of my most favorite courses were on Native American spirituality. And there's particularly one on Native American ecology. And I loved it. The principles that you embody, that principles that the Native American people talk about, it's something that's applicable to all people. You cannot be, born into the Native American community to see the value in what there's so much wisdom in that. So yeah, I remember that was our first encounter.
They call those territories too the sacred bioregions, and we're compelled to protect the regions. So what happens is, even though other people have acquired the land, we're still responsible. That's the belief. The belief is we are responsible because its creator brought us here, and the reason we believe is to take care of the area, and not just the land, but the creatures, right? So our other relatives on land, in the ocean, in the sky. So that sacred obligation to the bioregion it's compelling, and it's also there's so much, like I said, there's so few of us that to wear all these different hats, it can be also just exhausting because it's every day, and it's just there's so many things you you can't win, but you have to continue. You have to maintain that. And when somebody can't, they have to step back. Somebody else has to move forward. It cannot stop. I mean, it just can't. It's not like a strategy or a non-manipulation. It's a compelling part of our spirituality to recognize that we're a fabric, that we're just part of the fabric, and all these things are our responsibility.
Right. Deborah, you talked about how, a lot of the community, they're facing this sense of depression. A lot of it is attributed to a sense of loneliness, because they're not able to connect. And, we have another program called Courageous Conversations. And one of the topics, not this Friday, but next Friday, that we're addressing is exactly that, the kind of the psychological and mental health people as we're going through this. So I wonder how do you deal with that? How do the people, the Chumash people, you're such a small community, you said 40. I mean, I was thinking about that. My in-laws family is twice that much. And that's just, with you know what I mean? So that's such a valuable thing that, it's so precious. And so clearly I'm sure that the bonds are significant, and not to have that on a physical presence. So what are the means in which you are, utilized to kind of deal with that sense of loneliness and depression and sadness?
And I think a lot of it has to do with modern technology too, because one of the things, like for example, when my dear friend was in the hospital, she was she wasn't able to talk for a while because of the tracheotomy, but she was then moved out of the ICU after a period of time, probably almost a month, and into another room. And one of the things that she said when she could finally talk was, or I think she texted me, she says, could you please send me some of our songs? And so that's what I've done. And even after she got home, she also said the same, can you send me this song, this prayer song, or let's pray about, let's pray in our language. So that's what most people wanted to do with the languages. The first thing they would say is, we want to pray in our home language. So I think sending each other those voice clips, and then also maintaining groups on like text groups. Every day we were in contact about what was happening with our sister, with our culture bearer, but also with each other, because there were, for example, one of the sisters had, their grandchild was born, and they were not able to see their grandchild. So a while before they were able to see their grandchild. And then so that just some families are separated based on their vulnerability, so just supporting that too, like you will see this person soon, and that kind of thing. We're supporting and listening to each other, but it's a smaller group within a larger group, so there may be maybe 12 to 14 of us maintaining that, and then spreading it to the families. Because when I talk about people that show up, they have families, and it's a big community, but the participants are small. The participants are low, because there's only, a lot of people, because I think I've mentioned it like almost like a gradation. There's all these different things. So you have a lot of people that are maybe not following, they follow both traditional ways and also like say Christianity, but they're doing both. And there's some that are more doing one versus another. And so then you have like the history of this state and this country. So we have people scattered all over the place. So it's just we try to maintain those connections in any way we can, especially now that we can't be together. But and then also making things for one another. Like, for example, I have some friends that are up in Yurok, and they live in Northern California. And in Southern California, we grow the white sage. They don't grow it up there. So you have to harvest it, you have to dry it, and you have to wrap it before it gets too dry. So those are some of the prayer things that we do working with the plants. So every sage bundle you wrap, you're selecting these pieces, you're being gratitude with the sage and wrapping it with the prayer. So I just sent a few bundles to my friend, and that's another way that we share. We share by sharing the medicines. People that have gathered and dried medicine teas, they'll share with people. There's things that we can send one another that are cultural medicines, natural medicines that we send to one another, and also things to use for spiritual.
So that allows for still a sense of connection and with one another. I know our time is almost up, Deborah, but there's two questions that I wanted to ask you. Two more questions, if I may. Now, sure. In the news, we've heard there's been parts of the Native American community that have been hurt really significantly by this, right? I think it's the Navajo Indians in Arkansas, right?
Oh no, they're in Arizona and New Mexico. Yeah, they're actually in 4 states, but in Arizona and New Mexico is the biggest concentration. Navajo Nation, the Hopi Nation, and the Pueblos.
That's right.
So these folks have really, because I think what a lot of folks don't realize is that they're in the remote areas. A lot of them don't speak English. There's also no water. There's no running water. They live by well water, or they're hauling water. And some of these folks are they're elderly, and they've been there's no way to just like wash your hands like the CDC would say. And so you had a rapid wildfire that just went rampant in the Navajo Nation, but also in the Hopi Nation, which is right next door, and then next door to that, they're the other Pueblo nations. So they have been really severely impacted. And then you have people taking a stand, like in South Dakota, that have block access to the reservation because they want to keep their people safe. And then you have action taken by the governor and by basically saying you can't do that. But there's been a lot of really hard hit places, and I think it has to do with, well, one, the way of living, the lack of access to resources, the lack of government response, because the Native people that are federally recognized have a nation-to-nation relationship with the government. So the federal government. So the federal government is responsible for health care and all these other items, and they did not send the relief. And some, I don't know if some people have heard, but they ordered some, there were Navajo Nation ordered some personal protective gear, and they got body bags instead. So that was all over the Native community, and people started stepping up, individuals. So like some actors and people that were, that became aware. It's like individuals stepped forward, and then there was a fund created by the Seventh Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples, which is called the Flicker Fund, and those there was they've distributed since the pandemic about $750,000 to Native communities. But there's a lot of need, and there's a lot of communities. You can't be everywhere, but I think that that they really, you see what's happening. And I have a friend that lives on Hopi, in a Hopi village, and he's a younger man, so he's like in his 30s, I think. And they put together some young people, and they started delivering sanitizer. They were able to get sanitizer and also food and things to some of the more remote locations. So it is, they have really suffered, and they have the highest per capita death rate of any place. So they had surpassed New York about a week ago in terms of the per capita. Like I said, it's not many of us left, but that was, and I think too, just because of those statistics, you could see how every person, that precious knowledge and wisdom and connection and continuum has been disrupted by this. And it's how absolutely frightening it is to think of losing anybody in those communities. But even like one of Miss Navajo Nation, she was 28 years old and she died. So it's very real, very real. And there are some of the people that don't really, it's not real because it's not visible, right? So it's kind of hard also to that segment of the population, of the Native population, to impress that.
Right. So what can we do, Deborah? Me, myself sitting here and hearing this, and then, our listeners, our viewers that are watching this, a little while ago, you said that, we persist, we do our part, it may be a small amount of people, but that's our responsibility. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. So in that regards, are there things that we can do to help with what's going on there? Are there ways that we can contribute to ensure that they continue to get the supplies? I know you said they have now, but the trajectory is such that usually there's an influx, and then there's you
get an infusion, and then it doesn't. And that's the truth. I mean, I think that if it would really be a blessing to have people look at that issue, look to find out about what is happening there on the Navajo Nation, the Hopis, and the Pueblos, especially. It's happening all over, but there are some places that have been able to protect their people better than others in terms of because of their location, because of their stance. And I think if people look at that, they're being aware and also telling others that this is what's happening. It's like this small segment of society that's practically invisible is really suffering. It just makes me want to cry. But yeah, it's so disheartening to see, and the helplessness. So, for example, in South Dakota, I asked one of the sisters there, what can we do? other tribal nations, what can we do to help you? The Lakotas. And she said, just pray for us. And so that's what we're doing. In all of our prayers, we're incorporating the Lakota people, the Wampanoags from the East Coast. There's just so many things that are going on. But I also think as a practical way to help also would be to look at the Flickr Fund, at the 7th Generation Fund for Indigenous Peoples on their website. They're the oldest Native American nonprofit, and they're the ones that have distributed that money to all over the state, all over the country, and all over with various places, not just with food, masks, protective gear, those kinds of things, just essentials that everybody should have, but it's really missing in these communities.
We will definitely, at the end of this program, we'll highlight that organization, and and definitely encourage all of our listeners and our viewers to take a look at that and see in what ways that we can help them. So, Deborah, I want to read you. I want to give you a hug, and I can't, and I know, and I'm so sorry. It's there's so many acts of goodness that have come out of acts of altruism that we've seen, but at the same time, it's also this whole pandemic. I think all of us can agree that it's also really highlighted a lot of disparities that have always existed, but now it's just a light is shining on it, and it's hard. It's hard when and I think one of the reasons we wanted to do these programs is to address those issues, but also to give us a sense of hope and continuum, right? That yes, this is going on, but we all have a part. We all, like you said, it's beautiful that we're all part of this fabric, and it's not just about me, myself, and I, but it's about all of us together. So we'll definitely highlight that organization and encourage our viewers to take a look at it and contribute and help in whatever capacity that they're able to.
Thank you so much.
Goodness, my hour's almost through, but my last question is, it's funny, Deborah, I tell you about how I love these the classes that I've taken on Native American spirituality, and you talk about the 7th generation. That concept of 7th generation is something that's very core, right? And even just, I think it was just last week, I was talking to my husband, Arfan, about our daughter Zahra, and she's 16 months, and I forget what the context was, but I found myself saying, you know what? The Native Americans think any act that they do, they think about how it's going to affect 7 generations down the line. And then they decide whether that action is something that's good or not, right? And it was something, I don't even remember what it was, but that's how much of an impact all that made to me. So I wanted to ask you, as we kind of, come to a closing of this session, can you tell us, or can you share a story, something from your faith, from your community that will help us, that will be a source of inspiration for us as we all kind of live through this pandemic, and as we all live in this kind of uncertainty, that will give us a sense of hope. I would love that.
What I want to share, I think one of the things that I'd like to share is a family story. My grandfather, he was born in 1897. He lived till he was 94, and he went through the Spanish flu pandemic. And in the story that he told us, he was my Chumash grandfather. When the pandemic raged through California, he was in one of those facilities where people were just basically lying in the beds, many of them just dying, and he saw death all around them. But he had this feeling inside of him that he needed to leave. He needed to leave and be out in the sunshine and be with nature. So he said it took everything that he could to get up and walk out and sit in the sun and be. And he eventually recovered after so many people had died around him or that he saw dying. But I think what that tells us too is about the strength of our human vision and our own internal strength to overcome these kinds of things. And And even with my friend, when she was so close to death and they had her doing a FaceTime with her family, which I was on a FaceTime with a FaceTime so I could see her. But I was thinking about that, praying that you can do this, you can do this. And she tells me now that the story for her was, at some point I said she had to make that decision, to give up or keep going. And I think my grandfather, by seeing those death around him, had his own internal spiritual calling that said, or to move, to get out, and of course he lived till he was 94. He survived and was able to pass on a bunch of stories of his life, and also just things that were triumphant, but things that were sad and heartbreaking. But they're all part of our history. And so the thing I would say is that we can do anything. We have the strength, the courage, and when you have the spirituality to go forward, you can.
That's beautiful. When you have the spirituality to go forward, you can. And I want to circle back to one of the things you said in the beginning, which thought was so beautiful. You said how you live your life is your prayer.
Yes.
Right? I mean, how significant is that? Just if we truly implemented that, if we truly, lived by that, how you live is your prayer. I mean, there's it's profound. The effects of it are profound. And so that's just amazing. Thank you.
Oh, so welcome.
I wonder if I could ask you one other thing. And how long can I go on before stop? But would you honor us? Would you please, bring this conversation to an end by a prayer, a song, whatever your heart feels is the right thing to do?
Absolutely. There's a song that it expresses some melancholy, but it also expresses the hope. And what it says is that it's already day, we rise and we pray. And they're asking Creator, Tanikilikio, to watch over us, to watch over all the people. So, and we're in that spot where there's many of us we have seen the devastation around us, but at the same time, we rise every day and we do our part. We do our part, whether it's helping people, delivering groceries to people's porches, or wearing our mask when we're outside, or praying for one another. All of those things are part of that. So, the song, Moke, 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 Salishao. Moke, 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 Salishao. Escuta que alasa, escuta que alasa, ya, 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 ya. Tani kilikiyu, Tani kilikiyu. Moke, 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 salishao. Moke, 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 salishao. Escuta que alasa, escuta que alasa, ya, 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 ya. Tani kilikiyu, Tani kilikiyu. Watch over all of us.
Thank you, Deborah. That was perfect. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for sharing your faith with us. And, if there's ever an opportunity, Deborah, where, when you gather as a group, whether it's Zoom and, in that capacity, that we could join you, please let us know.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
People who would love to. And I've done that in the past. And, it made such a lasting impact on me. So we would love that. So that opportunity.
Absolutely.
From just my heart to yours, thank you so much for being sharing this hour with us, and know that, we're all in each other's prayers. And, the way that we live our life is our prayer. And that's just beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you too.
Thank you, all of you, for being with us today. We're just so honored and grateful to have you be a part of our family as well. All these programs that we do, we hope that you'll continue to support us as we, implement these programs during this pandemic, and so that we could create a sense of community amongst us as well. We hope that you'll join us next Monday. We have Patty Heckman, who will be speaking about the SGI Buddhist faith, and so we'll learn a little bit about that. And also, please do like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube page so that you can have access to all of these videos as well. So thank you so much, and until next week, we hope that you also find hope through your faith, and find the silver lining in this pandemic. So take care, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.